I'm Matt Wilhelmi. I'm the owner of Strategic Voyages Business Consultants. I'm also the author of Taboo Business Questions, What's Haunting Every Entrepreneur's Growth. And today I'm joined by Dilara Cossette. She's the founder of Focus Image Pro. She has her MBA in marketing as well as certificates in a few other areas of marketing, specifically related to demand generation. She runs a demand generation agency. And in this episode, we're going to unpack some cautionary tales. And so the first one that Dilara is interested in sharing with you is about organizational culture and really how demand gen really kind of affects organizational culture. So Dilara, I'm really excited to hear this story. What can you tell me about this organization?
Thank you, Matt. I just wanted to share like a few examples when I was working as a full-time before running my own agency, as well as now working with so many different organizations. I think you can feel it. I said feel it. You can feel it right away, the culture, if it's a bad or good. And the way how people communicate, the way how they talk to you. Sometimes people think that if you don't say anything, you won't see anything. But honestly, this hand gesture, nonverbal communication, it means a lot, especially when I'm right now as an agency owner. I hop on a call with like marketing, and also they bring some sales leaders. I experienced a few times that people start arguing, during the call. And I'm like, okay, these guys are not working really towards the same direction. They are not on the same page. And they can sometimes yell at each other. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to work with them because they will be yelling at me at the end of the day. And, I've been working with so many different organizations. One thing I wanted to mention that until you join a company with a great culture, you would never realize that you have been working in a toxic environment. Because having this great example when everyone respects each other, everyone trusts, they're not afraid to say, hey, I made a mistake, I'm sorry, and no one is going to blame you. That creates an environment of positive culture. And the problem is, like, unfortunately, until you join this amazing organization that I really wish everyone to have a chance to work at, you don't realize that, oh my God, I wasn't happy. I was in a toxic, work environment. So organizational culture is very important, especially if they are working with an agency. I think they don't use the same voice and tone. They can be rude sometimes because they think like, I'm hiring someone, I can treat them as I want, as I like. So during the first discovery calls, it's very important to make sure that we are on the same page, that we build and start our relationship based on trust, transparency, respect. And this is very important to me. And I'm very selective who I want to work with because, we, as I always say, we grow together. We have to be on the same page.
Yeah, so Dilara, when you're talking to an organization and they start arguing with each other on the first call, that's got to be a little bit frustrating for you because as an expert in demand generation, you've got probably a number of different clients that you could work with, and you're probably going to want to work with people that are easier to work with than harder. And so I'm interested to hear what, part of demand gen and how that maybe solves those organizational culture issues. Do you have any examples of maybe an organization that has kind of their culture figured out, and kind of what is that brighter side of that journey if they do figure out demand gen? How does that fix the culture?
Great question. I'm a huge fan of cultural organization, and I read a lot. I educated myself a lot on this topic, how actually to bring culture and these core values along with my demand generation solutions. But that example, actually, it's a good example when they started arguing about the solution. So marketing, a representative on the call was saying like, yeah, we should invest in social media. Sales was arguing, pushing back. And I realized that the voice is raising and I have to stop at some point. I was like, hey guys, that's why we're on the call, to make sure we're on the same page. And demand gen is somewhere between sales and marketing. So what I do along with my services, I always make sure that I bring these two teams on the same page. I try to support both of them because basically working towards one goal, that's the case, no matter how you get there, right? But you will get there quicker if you will work together as marketing and sales team together. And more organizations, actually, I'm seeing now, they started reporting to the same VP or just like, head of department. They're actually merging sales and marketing departments when we're talking about mid-sized organizations. And to me, it makes so much sense. You are actually trying to avoid the silos, working like in silos. And towards one goal. Because what I'm seeing more and more, if they report to different people in the organization, the KPIs and goals of both the partners might be slightly different. And that's where it creates this, error in organizational culture, because they don't trust each other, right? They always blame each other. This, like, traditional marketing doesn't generate enough good leads. And then marketing blames sales that, that you don't know how to talk to prospects. I'm like, seriously?
So when you're working with a company, you're able to really kind of help bridge that gap, right? I think you used that term in our first episode, when you're bridging kind of those conversations, and you're almost acting as a mediator sometimes, because you're saying, hey, it might be sales, it might be marketing, it might be both, but like, let's come back together and let's talk about what is the future. What's the strategy here? How are we going to solve some of these problems for our clients? What's really that messaging supposed to be, so that that client, that customer, gets a really cohesive experience throughout the life cycle. And what I heard you say is that when you can solve that problem, the culture really kind of improves, because then everybody's aware of what's going on and your messaging really sticks. And that's very encouraging. So thank you for sharing that story. I did want to talk just for a moment about an organization that I worked with in the past that was a little bit disinterested in diversifying their demand generation strategy. I don't profess to be a demand generation expert. I'm not, trying to do that in the workplace. Typically when I'm coming into companies as a strategic advisor, I'm coming in wearing a financial hat, CFO, chief finance officer, something along those lines. And this particular SaaS company wanted me to do a valuation for their business. They were going to be looking for funding from VC companies, and they wanted to do a valuation. Well, part of my valuation, Dilara, is that I do a SWOT analysis, and very specifically on the finances, but I also look at kind of what's working and what's not working. And so what I noticed is their channel, their ability to kind of go out to the market with a messaging. Who are they targeting? They were only targeting educational institutions. And they were very much convinced this is the only way we can get sales. This is what our software is. But they were not interested in considering any other applications for their software. Now, some situations that might make a ton of sense because the company is very new, the product isn't fully implemented in a lot of other areas. But this particular company, they've been around for a while. The software worked really, really well for educational institutions, but there were two other applications that were so easy for them to be able to not even really do much with their software. It was maybe a little bit of tweaking with their demand gen messaging. They didn't even want to consider it. And so one of them was applying the same software as a service offering to IT companies. And the other one was to logistics companies. And so I didn't want to get into the specifics of the software, but just know that there are companies out there that are very narrowly focused, almost to a fault. And what happens then is you're so focused on a niche. Everybody talks about niching up and being, kind of the expert at that niche. What ends up happening though, is if that niche changes, or if there's a buying habit that shifts, or sometimes regulations shift, your marketing channel totally dries up, and you might not catch it fast enough. And then you're going to continue to invest money in your marketing channels that's just going nowhere. And so a lot of wise business people would say you should diversify, and you should have, your offering not to the masses, not to hundreds of opportunities, but not be so narrowly focused that you're just, kind of in one arena. And so I was wondering if you've ever seen that, companies that maybe this isn't unique. I would imagine there are other companies out there that are just so narrowly focused, they can't even consider the fact that there's other opportunities to market their business.
You will be surprised. There are a lot of organizations like that. You join the call and they say, we don't want this, we just want this. And then you put together the strategy, offering them so many solutions they just don't want. They have budget. They are afraid of testing the things. And I always say, in demand gen and overall, even in marketing, if you talk about digital marketing or all type of marketing, it's all about testing. I always compare it with cooking. When you cook something and you just try to come up with a recipe, you make a mess in the kitchen. But if once you found it, then you clean up the mess. I think this is very similar to marketing. You have to test test and test again until you find the best channels. And it's not one channel, it's a few channels, but you have to test maybe hundreds to understand what works the best. And only after that, you can say, I want to focus on these five, let's say, channels. But I'm seeing companies, they're doing Google ads, they're doing Facebook, let's say, ads, and they're not happy and satisfied with number of leads, but they don't want to do anything else. They literally just don't want. And there is not much I can help them with, right? And, I'm like, hey guys, this is a strategy, this is the tactics, let's do it. It's still within your budget. You don't have to increase the budget. They don't want. And I had a few clients like this. It's very difficult to achieve something really impressive when they're limited. I don't know where it's coming from. I think like sometimes it's like maybe layers of approvals. They're afraid to get an approval, not to be, or maybe judged at some point. But yeah, there's a case there.
Well, I think some people are just scared of maybe offering a different opinion. I've been in a number of different meetings where I've noticed that folks are kind of scared of having an idea. That's not a good culture, but I am generally the one who isn't necessarily scared of that. And so I'll ask kind of the dumb question in the room that maybe somebody else should have asked, but it's also having the confidence to say, hey, if the total marketing budget is X, can we divert like a fraction to trying some other things? We're not talking about the whole budget. We're not talking about a new budget. We're just saying, hey, like if it's 10,000 a month or even 100,000 a month, or, some of these SaaS companies, their budgets are really, really large. You don't need all of it to test a new channel, but can we come up with some amount that we can test some new things? And just seeing what the results are, having a very focused, measured approach really kind of adds a lot of value. So, Dilara, I did want to give you a chance to go through kind of your second cautionary tale. You had mentioned employee disengagement. And so I'm wondering if that's linked to demand gen from the standpoint of not having enough leads kind of leads to maybe a lack of engagement, or you're being held to certain standards that are just so hard to meet because the demand gen isn't working. Is that what you've seen in the workplace as well?
Yes, and it's not linked to demand gen. You will be surprised that it's actually linked to your story that you just shared. One of the potential reasons why people don't want to test, because when you bring it to the line manager, and line manager asks questions and hesitating, and just like once, twice, fifth time you're bringing the ideas and then it's rejected and declined, that actually leads to disengagement because you are not motivated anymore. You don't want to bring any new ideas. And I'm seeing that a lot. I'm seeing that actually in the sales team when I work with, because I mentioned I work a lot with the sales team. So marketing does something, but they don't hear sales, because what I do, I always talk to sales, and usually privately, sometimes, one-on-one. I'm like, are you happy? Are you okay? Let me know. I can, I can try to do something, even though I'm not part of an organization, but this is the way how we work. It's a hand-holding approach. And it's not only hand-holding marketing, team's approach, but it's also sales team. And sometimes you hear them, and I was like, yeah, I brought it a few times and nothing changed. But you have to hear sales team. I always say, if something doesn't work, I will know that, right? But I would like to know it if something like, as soon as possible, right? Because if something is working, that's great, right? We're all both happy, marketing and sales team. But something doesn't work, if sales notice that before me, it will save a lot of money. Please come and tell me. And it's going back to the transparency and trust core values. To build this culture, even as a external agency, it's very important to make sure, hey, you can come and tell me. I won't take it personally. Actually, you will help me to achieve results quicker. But when sales doesn't see the support, even marketing, that leads to disengagement. I see that in a lot of organizations. So yeah, I think because maybe they're not supportive enough in an ideas, in maybe their career path, right? It could be different, tons of reasons, but it's a big issue. And it's also linked to the culture at the organization, because this engagement, it's actually something that it's a red flag for the organization, for the team members, for line managers, for HR, for the leadership board, right? If someone is disengaged, I mean, that's a red flag. You have to do something. You have to figure it out. Why? Because that disengagement, it directly affects the performance. And that's what I'm seeing. And when I see someone on the marketing or on the sales team, they're disengaged, the numbers goes down right away.
Absolutely. That happens all the time. And I think, the more and more I work with middle market companies and software companies, and I fix a lot of their finance problems and kind of clarify a lot of the finance pieces of the business, I get asked some of those types of questions. It's almost like, Matt, you've done such a great job solving these finance problems. Now can you solve the marketing problems? And like, I'm not, that's not really my wheelhouse. But what they're really asking though, Dilara, is, Matt, you were able to get everybody on the same page, talking to each other, processes are documented, we have understanding of the measurements of how everything works. How can we do that across the whole organization? And so that's a whole separate conversation, but it's exciting to hear that demand gen solved a lot of those problems too, because you're able to come in, develop a strategy, get everybody from the two sides of the house, the sales and the marketing, and marry them together and allow them to move forward. So that's really encouraging to hear. Just to kind of transition here a little bit into our third episode and give people a little sneak peek on that. We will be going over some different issues that a business-to-business SaaS company had that we talked about in our first episode. And to remind everybody where we're at, there are 3 key issues that we're going to be solving here in just a moment. The first one is a lack of industry awareness for the solution that this service as a software company provides. The second one is their social media marketing, both pay-per-click and organic SEO, was not really producing as many leads as they needed, even though they were dumping a ton of money into it, because really all the leads are coming from the founder/CEO of the organization. And their third and final issue that we uncovered was their email marketing list wasn't really growing. It wasn't producing leads, and they didn't really know why. And so Dilara Cossette, founder of Focused Image Pro, is my guest for this episode, and she's going to be helping us come up with some solutions on the third episode. I hope to see you there.